Is it true that XRP absolutely must hit some face-melting peak? Or can we just go into a bear market with that never having happened, without a proper alt season in general? I want to talk about that. I got perspective that I think is rather insightful from an analyst that I just recently started following. I teased this a little bit in the very last video that I published all up on the YouTubes. And I just think it's a compelling case as to why we absolutely are not entering a bear market right now. We just aren't. And I could be wrong. I'm just a dude on the internet. Fine. I'm just telling you what I actually believe. But I think these arguments are really strong. And then also there was a post from the blockchain backer. And he was talking about, certain coins popping off. And I want to talk a little bit about why. And even if there is a particular reason that they wouldn't, having to do with the very nature of their existence, which may be the case, actually the XRP ledger makes it so that that particular case doesn't really matter. So sit tight, stick with me. I'll explain what I mean. But before going for a post that I came across because chart analyst Credible Crypto responded to this, and I'm going to share with you what he had to say in just a moment here. But it's a post from somebody named Brett, not somebody I'm familiar with, not that it necessarily matters, but he seems to be interested genuinely in civil discourse and kind of curious as to like what's the argument behind we have to have an alt season. I think that's a fair question. And so here's what he said. One of the most common arguments I've seen about why Bitcoin cannot be topped is we haven't had alt season. Yet I haven't seen a single good reason why we have to have a full-blown euphoric alt season in order to say Bitcoin had a successful bull run. I'd love to see Bitcoin keep running. I'm open to ideas/theories about why alt season is required for that to do so. Okay, totally fair point of discussion. So he seems like he's not convinced, obviously. But I am convinced. I'm not that I literally know for sure, but I'm convinced that, yeah, we're going to have one. And to me, even without charts, even without historic precedent, which is of the utmost importance in my mind, even without that, it's human nature, folks. Why the hell would it be the case that Bitcoin peaks? So like, imagine that's already happened. And so we are entering a bear market. Imagine that's the case. Why are humans no longer interested in taking profit from Bitcoin and then rotating it into coins that obviously haven't moved yet? They've always been interested before. Humans have DNA that is such that it results in those behaviors. But what did human DNA change? We got 16 years worth of data showing that that is the case. So yeah, you can draw a historic precedent too. And I do think it makes sense to do that. But it is true. Even without that, explain to me why the humans are not acting like humans anymore. It doesn't make logical sense. So even right there, that's enough. Now, of course, you can make a much stronger case. You should talk about historic precedent. And you should talk about also this. Here's another reason. This is from CoinMarketCap, crypto market cycle top indicators. And I'm going to just keep highlighting this so that as many people as possible are aware of it. You can check this as frequently as you want. It's 30 cycle top indicators. And these have triggered, all of them have triggered at the tops of previous market cycles. But right now, 0 out of 30 have triggered. Why would we think that the cycle's over? Why wouldn't we then have an alt season? It doesn't make sense. And here's a post from Credible Crypto. He responded to Brett, and he said, biggest alt season will happen after the Bitcoin top, not before, in my opinion. So if one is looking for a major alt season as a precursor to a Bitcoin top, they'll probably miss the Bitcoin top. In the same way, if someone is crying about alts not performing despite Bitcoin's strength, it's probably just an indication that the Bitcoin top isn't in yet, not that the cycle is over or that we are in a broader bear market. Yeah, and so that's true too. There's a reason that the cycle ends with alt season. It's because look, people invest in Bitcoin first. That is true, just acknowledge reality. But then when they do take profits, because you get this ridiculous bubble, it entices people to sell. Well, of course, where are you going to put it next? It's already in Bitcoin. You put it in the rest of the stuff. So it just makes logical sense, of course. And here's a post from Psychedelic. This is an analyst that I started following more recently. And this is the one that I was teasing in my very last video. I just think this is an awesome case. Like this, to me, this is a straight up banger of a post, as the youths would say. And it just, I get the very strong sense from this guy. Like, he's just being intellectually honest. It's not that his bias is going to make it so that he only argues what he wants to be true. I get the sense from this guy that he's arguing what he genuinely believes. And he's like, it just doesn't make logical sense to believe we're in a bear market. And so here's a market cap Bitcoin dominance percentage chart. And he wrote the following. We are all being psyoped. I have spent hours today looking at all the charts that matter, studying the macro and past precedent. And I cannot reconcile that the market is top tier. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but I just don't see it. Beyond Bitcoin being very close to breaking a few moving averages and some weekly bearish divergences, I'm just not seeing it. We have Bitcoin dominance looking extremely bearish after a clean break of the 2.5-year uptrend and the 1-week 50 SMA, and now putting in a very clean retest of that break. Okay, and that's good news. If Bitcoin dominance is bearish, you could still have the price of Bitcoin go up. It just means dominance falling apart, and what follows? Well, where do you think the dominance is going? If Bitcoin's falling, it's going to the altcoins. Alt season, my friend. That's the point he's making. The chart for Bitcoin dominance, which is what's on your screen right here, it looks good. Bitcoin dominance is right now a little shy of 60%. Don't you think it's going to bottom a lot lower than that? Unless history no longer rhymes with itself? Yeah. And then he says, that is not how a cycle ends. We have total 3, so that's the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's this chart. It says we have total 3 cup and handling in a cup and handle within a 4.5-year range, holding 1-week 50 SMA. We have the ETH BTC pair consolidating after reversing off the bottom after a 3-year downtrend. And folks, Ethereum, and this isn't denominated in Bitcoin, but when Ethereum starts going, that's what kicks off alt season. So that should, even if you don't hold Ethereum, you should be excited for that. You know, even if you're like me and you're like, I am biased. I'm make no bones about that. I am heavily biased. I know I still want to live within the confines of reality, but yeah, XRP is my favorite coin and I want it to do well. But that's why I say, if Ethereum is going to do well, good. That historically kicks off alt season. That should lead to what I care about most, which is XRP rocketing, and then the rest of my altcoins. But yeah, look at this. Again, he said, reversing off the bottom after a 3-year downtrend. Folks, markets find bottoms, okay? And then he said here, we have others dominance. So that would be the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding the top 10. We have others dominance. That's this chart. Bottoming out after 3.5 years of nonstop down. Folks, markets find bottoms. The same freaking thing was true for XRP. You can look at even the XRP BTC chart from 2024 or the XRP USD chart 2024. I said it for like most of that year. Markets find bottoms. I didn't know for sure where the bottom was, but yeah, it found a bottom and it rocketed the hell out of there, didn't it? Well, same concept here applies. This whole market's going to rampage to the upside almost certainly, right? Don't you think so? I mean, I could be wrong. I'm just a simple little hams all up on the YouTubes. And I admit I don't know for sure. Fine, I could be wrong. Regular guy, not a finance guy, but doesn't it just make logical sense that we would see that? I sure as hell think so. And then he says, none of this is how a cycle ends. It is totally indicative of how a cycle shapes up as it's nearing its end before the largest overall expansion. Bitcoin is the king, and if it decides to go down, it will drag the market with it. But if that happens, dominance will just climb more, which inevitably leads to an even greater eventual fall. Then we have the macro with quantitative tightening ending and the Fed growing their balance sheet again early next year. And folks, I'm so glad he said that. Look at this. He's highlighting charts. Yes, important. But he's also acknowledging the macro. You absolutely cannot come to a extremely strong conclusion about what's going to happen if you just ignore macro. Maybe you'll be right a lot of the time if you're just a chart guy, but if you're ignoring macro, that's a huge piece of the puzzle. That's real stuff. That's real life. That really does change in a very material way the way money flows around the entire damn planet. You have to acknowledge that. And then he says, everything the data is telling me is that we have the final leg of this market left to go in which Bitcoin makes new highs, dominance continues to fall, ETH BTC continues to pump, Total 3 breaks into price discovery, and others' dominance reverses. yes, Bitcoin might push a bit lower, but I see nothing on the very broad scale, not just looking at one chart and one indicator. That convinces me we have topped. You say nothing has convinced him that we have topped and are entering a bear market. He says, happy to hear opposing thoughts to this post, but I just can't see it. We're going higher and soon. Isn't that a great post? I think that's very level-headed, very reasonable. And yeah, nobody knows for sure it's going to happen, and he seems to be operating in good faith. But just, how can you ignore historic precedent? How can you ignore the macro? And then just focus on like the various few things you can find that might look bearish in various charts and various metrics. You can find those, and I do highlight those on my channel. But how do those few things, how in your mind could it be the case that those few things are of paramount importance? Like they're the most important things to factor in when trying to decide whether it's more probable or not that we're entering a bear market or continuing in a bull market. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I came across this post thanks to Matthew Hyland, popular chart analyst. But here's what he had to say about that post. He said, yep, not to mention Wall Street is on the verge of entering crypto with access to hundreds of ETFs, with prices down 90% while retail flees and quit as sentiment hits worst levels since 2018. Pretty par for the course. Retail always loses or finds a way to lose to the institutions. Yeah, that also sounds pretty spot on. And then there was this is from the blockchain backer. I just thought this was something kind of interesting, something I just want to say a few sentences on basically, but he wrote just this morning, genuinely can't believe it took this long for people to realize private transactions are important. Your current forms of money are private. When you want Amazon, Facebook, Google, your neighbors, and scammers knowing exactly where and how you spend your money? Yeah, and so perfectly fair point to bring up. And what's he referencing? Of course, privacy coins rocketing. And you can see Monero here. He says, privacy, Monero taking the rings. And he posted that in the morning. You can see Monero rocketing privacy coin right there. And here's the chart over the last 12 months. Maybe it's just starting for Monero. It is up, in the last 7 days, 20%. In the last 30 days, up almost 40%. In the last 90 days, up 56%. But it looks more flat compared to the next two coins I'll show you, which is Zcash. Look at that thing. That's something going to rocket it. Then there's also Dash. That one also rocketed. And it's pulling back right now a little bit. But look at that chart. I mean, those two in particular. So maybe Monero is going to follow. I don't know. But I wanted to bring this up because like the XRP ledger makes it so that we actually don't have to care about this. So I like privacy coins conceptually. I think that it makes sense as long as the government isn't going to squash them. I think there's a place for it. There should be anyway. There should be. And so the blockchain backers right in pointing this out. Yeah, if you're going to use a cryptocurrency in place of, instead of a fiat currency, well, yeah, privacy actually does matter. So do we have to have privacy coins to do that? Well, actually, no. So, and again, I'd agree with blockchain backer that this matters. Like I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just saying, there's a reason that it actually doesn't have to matter. You ever heard of spend the bits? I've talked about them on my channel before. But by the way, John Deaton's actually invested in this. He's publicly stated that he's invested in this company. And it's live today. This is not a science experiment. Spend the bits makes it so that you can spend your Bitcoin instantaneously. And you know what? It's powered by the XRP ledger. This is live today. It actually works. And so you don't have to have like all of your Bitcoin. Say you got a just ridiculous amount of your net worth in Bitcoin. Okay. You don't have to send it all to the third party entity that Spend the Bits is partnered with in order to spend your Bitcoin. You can send small amounts, and then you are protected by the centralized entity that will allow the transactions to flow. So because look, yeah, you're using the XRP ledger, but you're not going to know who's doing what. You're not going to know what those transactions are. You're not going to know who they are. So there is that layer of privacy actually because you're using a third party. Because basically it's tokenized Bitcoin on the XRP ledger, and that also fixes the problem. So yes, it's tokenized and it's true it is centralized, and with privacy coins, of course, it's true. Not centralized, that the privacy coins are decentralized. But what I'm saying is, if you're just spending a little bit, if just moving a bit of Bitcoin over because that's the amount that you want to spend, I don't think it really matters. I don't think that people are going to be like, this is a centralized solution. We're not going to. No, I don't think that matters because you're not handing all of your crypto over to a centralized entity. So I just don't think that people are mad at that. I think that's why Spend the Bits has found success so far. because it doesn't matter. I think people, it's just a common sense approach. Like, you can understand easily, like, you send over whatever amount you're going to want to spend for whatever time period, and that's all you have to send over. And then if you get scammed by the central authority, which, it's not going to, I personally don't believe that's going to happen. And I'm just saying, even in a bad hypothetical where that happens, it's just a little bit anyway. It doesn't wreck your world. That's the point. So you can have a solution, and cryptocurrency is still useful because you still get to have the custody yourself. And the XRP ledger is powering that. So I just wanted to say a little piece on that. So I'm with the blockchain backers thinking, yes, privacy coins matter. I'm glad they exist. I hope that they don't get squashed by governments around the world. But I'm saying, even outside of that, you still have a solution, and the XRP ledger is a solution for this problem. Tokenize whatever the hell you want and then move it. In this case, it's Bitcoin. I just think it's a pretty damn cool thing. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.